Now, odds are if you're watching this channel, or even if you are new and just randomly stumbled across this channel, you've either watched, played, or at least heard about a quirky little game known as Dead Space. Yes, that game. The game that seemingly a lot of people won't play because, let's be honest, it's pretty freaky. And as far as lore goes for this game, however, the general conception is that the marker is solely to blame for outbreaks of necromorphs popping up and annihilating the local population or even a planetary one. The thinking is an extra dimensional signal works its way through literally every known form of shielding possible that humans in the far-flung future have concocted. As it enters the body of a person, it will begin changing them. That said, with certain individuals, these changes have been identified in living people for specific reasons, which do not appear to have a clear reason as to why. Their immune system, along with their other mental faculties, appear to be compromised to some degree, with the former being almost brought to non-existent levels, as made mention by the Ishimura's medical examiner. So in today's episode, it's not clear at all what we're talking about, unless you read like the title or thumbnail, but we are actually going to discuss the viral bacteria from the Dead Space series. It seems that there is some confusion as to how a bacteria can't be a virus, which is true. They are two entirely different organisms, but it's not impossible for an organic microorganism to have viral properties, which we will discuss a little more heavily. So first things first, we need to discuss what exactly are the clues and evidence that is actually in this universe that says that there's bacteria. Well, the idea of this bacteria being present is much like how humans really tried to figure out what was making us sick during the Black Plague. Actually, it's extremely fitting if you kind of really think about it. We didn't really know Yersinia pestis was causing people to drop like flies during this time period. Just like we didn't know this form of viral bacteria that was present in Dead Space was causing people to change. So to figure out where it came from and what its purpose is, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, all the way back to when the black marker first hit Earth. Roughly 65 to almost really closer to 66 million years ago, the Yucatan Peninsula was struck by an asteroid. To save you the massive breakdown of what the marker does to the human psyche, which I have a video on that discussing Ellie and Lexine Weller's supposed immunity to the signal if you are interested, I'll kind of keep this rundown on the shorter side. Essentially, the marker touched down and wiped out the dinosaurs because of the massive rock it was riding down to the surface. Knowing that the Brethren Moons farm planets to continue on their network of influence, we know that this means it was intentionally done in order to create a more intelligent but wasteful species. All animals inhabiting the planet at this time period have been doing so for hundreds of millions of years, and no attempt to exit the planet and expand was ever made, which is really as far as we know. I mean, if you really think about it, if humans were to disappear right now within about 100,000 years, you wouldn't have ever known that we were here except for maybe a period of higher carbon dioxide in the cores drilled into Arctic ice. So in reality, we have no clue, but we haven't really found any evidence of any hyper-intelligent species. Anyhow, the animals that were in tune and in balance with nature would cause them to have lower numbers and really wouldn't have been that helpful for the Brethren Moons trying to create a new moon. As such, the marker was sent to Earth, annihilating the dinosaurs and putting mammals up to bat. This species would be heavily altered by the marker's presence over time, which would ultimately lead to man. Man is great, but the problem is, we like to have way too much fun and make way too many of us. Much like a petri dish whose materials are running out, a colony must be sent to another dish in order to secure more resources. The difference being that we are capable of sending back resources to the original dish in order to maintain that population as well, whereas with bacteria, the original colonies will expire after exhausting the environment. This is exactly what the Brethren Moons wanted, the exact right amount of desire to explore the cosmos mixed with a wastefulness that is unsustainable, combined with a desire to produce so many more of us. Over time, the black marker would lay in wait, slowly changing mammals into the creatures known as Homo sapiens. Eventually, humanity would rediscover this marker, which is where things finally start kicking off. Michael Altman, who became a martyr for the Church of Unitology because he was taken out by the Alphabet Boys, would discover a sample of this bacteria on the hull of the bathysphere. Deciding it was organic, eventually tests were conducted on the material to figure out exactly what it was. A scientist by the name of Grote Guth would go on to successfully cause the bacteria to reproduce in the absence of the marker, but as we all have done, he would inadvertently expose himself to a form of intergalactic bacteria, or so he thinks, by accidentally injecting himself in the arm. In a panic, he began to transform extremely quickly and then ran to the marker, hoping that would help him resist the infection from progressing, which for a time, it actually did. However, this would not save him ultimately. Prior to this, we actually learned that within a certain range of the marker, the bacteria does in fact enter a dormant state. Because of this, the two being the marker and bacteria appear to be connected in some way that is not largely understood. But, you know, I am actually going to explain this later on because I think I actually have a way to sort of like lay out their cooperation. Otherwise, I mean, come on, I wouldn't be Roanoke. The issue is, however, Groat would go on to be taken out by cracks. Afterwards, Groat's body would be transferred to another place outside of the influence of the marker, which, as you might imagine, is not a good idea. Groat would go on to have the bacteria reawaken in his now deceased being and then mutate him into a necromorph known as the Infector. This would ultimately result in cracks being infected, fused into a brute who would then go on to take out Altman. So the origins of the bacteria seem to show that this is not just a side effect of the marker, but intentional. What's interesting is the effect the marker seems to have on the body in general, but not only that, the effects it has on the mind of a person. Concerning the body, as made mention by a toxicology report on Captain Mathius, his immune system was massively compromised, with neutrophils and eosinophils being almost non-existent within his blood. Now, you know I'm not just going to leave you hanging on those, so let's start first with the neutrophils. Neutrophils are massively important concerning bacterial infections. They're responsible for something known as phagocytosis. They find invading pathogens, eat them, and then destroy them in the process. This is what's known as the innate immune system. The innate immune system is your first line of defense concerning any brewing would-be infection. As soon as the cells send out the international symbol for help, this immediately attracts the attention of these cells. They will move in quickly from the bloodstream to the area of invasion and immediately begin attacking anything that is not supposed to be there. In people with autoimmune disorders, this can actually result in the tissue damage that we have seen, as if that person was the invader as well. The innate protects you every day from would-be diseases that could spiral out of control if not for these cells, seeing as the body needs a few days to understand the pathogen and activate its ultimate answer, which is the adaptive immune system. So the first thing we see is Captain Mathius had these almost down to zero, and not just because of his end. The remains of those cells would have still been there post-mortem. However, another cell that is missing, which also makes this seem to be coordinated, is highly important for these types of infections. The captain was also missing any indication that he had any eosinophils at play. While neutrophils just straight up eat an invader, eosinophils are much more powerful in their ability to wipe out pathogens in the body. Containing a large amount of cytotoxic material within them, let's say they just happen to stumble across a cell that is presenting viral markers on the surface of the cell, which is actually what usually happens when a cell is infected, it will then release granules around that infected cell, which can damage it, then causing that cell to burst. Eosinophils are not just limited to exploding your own infected cells either. They will happen across a parasite that will cause it to rupture and also leak its contents out as the cytotoxic material eats through its body in some cases. But just so you know, our immune system isn't really that amazing against the parasites. Concerning bacteria, they are less capable than the neutrophils, but they actively participate in the destruction of bacteria in any way that they can. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? You have the one white blood cell known as a neutrophil that is tasked with finding and eating bacteria that it comes across, brought down to nearly non-existent levels in the body. And the eosinophils tasked with destroying cells infected with viruses as well as parasites, also completely degraded, all while in the presence of the marker. Well, that's because this is a definite coordination on the Brethren Moon's part. So let me explain. The general thinking is that the marker is fully at play when it comes to an outbreak, but it's becoming clear that there's a lot more to the infection process than just pure energy released from the marker influencing cellular activity and the firing of neurons within the brain. And here's why. As a person comes into contact with the marker, strange things begin to happen mentally as well as physically. Concerning mentally, they begin to hallucinate, but not only hallucinate, they can also draw symbols that they see. Contained within these symbols are not only the information to build markers, but also the genetic coding for the bacteria that surrounds the necromorph infection. As discussed in my marker immunity episode, this would be kind of for more intelligent people, and this would inspire them to build whatever it is that they are seeing. As been mentioned by the scientist on Titan Station, who doesn't even remember building a tiny marker as he blacked out, this means that the marker has the ability to run your brain on autopilot while the conscious you is basically out of the game. As you continue to build markers, possibly even outside the original barriers designed to hold back the signal, your body would begin degrading by design concerning your immune system. Your innate immunity, and beyond that, likely your adaptive, is attacked by the energy signaling, which quite clearly shows mitotic abilities would be diminished as well. However, this isn't a quick process. As the signal seeps into your body, your immunities would become more and more suppressed, which is interesting to say the least, as the signal also has the same effect in the presence of the marker. It would seem that not only does the signal scramble your brains, but from further out, it has a cellular depressing ability, stopping your body from waging war on the invading pathogen. Getting close enough to the marker, however, would in turn suppress the bacteria from growing out of control within your meat suit, but this would also drive you completely insane being that close to the marker. The marker is essentially forcing you to stay close, degrading your immune system's ability to fight pathogens, because if you get outside of a certain range, the bacteria will become more active and continue attacking your body. And it's not like you would even notice your immune system is being suppressed at first, as the bacteria is also suppressed and you continue to hallucinate. Eventually, you would move away from the marker, as is natural if you had the ability to think, which is exactly what the marker wants. As you move away, your body would not be able to keep up up with the infection. The viral bacteria is known to replicate itself over 20 times in just a few minutes, far outclassing one of the fastest growing bacteria we know of on Earth, E. coli, which can double itself in about 20 minutes. So even though your immune system is no longer suppressed by the marker due to distance, the issue is your body would begin to become very sick. With no neutrophils to scoop up the invading bacteria before it enters the cells early on, it would then grow unchecked in the body. Without eosinophils to inject the cells with cytotoxic material infected with this bacteria, it would move from cell to cell completely freely, as eventually you would quickly succumb to the infection before your adapted even had a chance to activate. As the infection continues to run unchecked, this is basically what causes the environment to change to a degree. The corruption growing everywhere is human cells mixed with this bacteria. It will begin to alter the atmosphere locally to a degree and also change the landscape by blocking off doors. The biggest example of this bacteria altering the air is made mention in my Weezer episode. This bacteria appears to be anaerobic, meaning that it does not need oxygen, and I hypothesized in specific areas would output methanol based on Hammond's reaction to the air that the Weezers produce. This bacteria is also what can be seen that the infectors are injecting into human brains, and should a large amount be injected into the brain of a person, it would obviously be too much for the natural immunities of a human to overcome because of the dosage, but also because of the sheer trauma to the brain that would most definitely break every body-wide signaling that the cells were really capable of by shutting down the heart of a person almost immediately due to shock. We also see that this bacteria, again likely due to the methanol production, which is explosive to a degree, that the exploders, infants, and Dead Space 2, and even the sacks on the face of the hive mind all possess. This shows that the bacteria is really intrinsically linked to the outbreak and likely a large driving force that is fairly unseen. So the question is now, with the bacteria rampant and all over the place, why doesn't Isaac get infected? Well, prior to an outbreak via a marker, things begin to build slowly at first. It may take a few days, but the signal will slowly start driving people mad. It can be assumed at this point that the immune system numbers are dropping as well. Then as bodies start dropping, the bacteria associated with the marker can infect the tissue that is no longer combative. This results in the necromorphs being formed through the mutation of cells under the influence of both the signal and the bacteria altering the DNA of a person, inspiring new growths all over the body, and even the bodies being pulled together with the bacteria acting as a medium. This may be possible as the body wouldn't really have a reaction to another body linking to it, seeing as there is no immune response and instead only the bacteria. Once the infection is in full swing, everyone there has a suppressed immune system, meaning that once attacked, the bacteria may actually be able to flourish depending on exposure time. This makes it even easier for the infection to spread through an area, and even those who may be resistant to the marker's hallucinogenic effects, but not outright immune to it, will still succumb. However, with Isaac and his team moving onto the ship after the infection, they're basically walking in with a full set of immunities, and they are still functional. Because of this, despite Isaac being cut and injured many times by the necromorphs, the bacteria is never able to really get a foothold in his body, as the marker signal doesn't have enough time to completely suppress his immune system. This buys him some time to move about the ship and then be attacked. By now, however, the final phases of the outbreak are being reached, so no new people entering the fray would really be all that important to the Brethren Moons, because likely the Necros would really just take them out anyhow. That said, Isaac isn't really your average person and has to be one of the unluckiest lucky people in existence, almost to the levels that rival Master Chief. So the last thing I want to clear up for everyone is, because I got comments on this so much when I talked about the Weezer, is I guess you don't know that viruses and bacteria are different from one another. Geez, Roanoke, are you even a biologist? And oh man, this one made my brain sort of want to melt out of my head. So okay, yes, viruses and bacteria, just so we all know, are entirely different organisms. The game isn't referring to them being one and the same, or even confused about really which is which. The bacteria has viral properties, which to a degree, bacteria already has viral properties now, and so do you. So this is actually widely off topic, but I figured I could share this with you because it's extremely interesting. Did you know that you are about 8% viral genetic coding? Because of virus interactions with eukaryotic cells and their propensity to drop off genes within our own genes, over time, these viruses have really just stuck around with us. And did you know that there is a hypothesis rolling around out there that this happened so much when we were single-celled organisms that it may be a possibility this influenced the way we have children, because we could have taken genes from the viruses that invaded us when we were single-celled life. Essentially, just to explain this, when sperm combines with an egg, it looks an awful lot like how a virus invades a cell, doesn't it? Is that not just like absolutely mind-blowing to you? That we may be so intrinsically linked to viruses that we owe our entire multicellular exchange of genes to viruses? Well, the reason I even mention all of this, well, sperm being a eukaryotic cell, can have viral properties and fuse with an egg, disseminating its genetic coding to link up with the other half in the egg cell to form you. Take bacteria and its ability to use conjugation to transfer plasmids between cells, and then you start to see that basically viral properties that are mentioned are quite literally just basically a cell forcing entrance into another cell to infect it with its genes, although it may be beneficial to both. This viral bacteria comes across your eukaryotic cells and then enters the cells using cellular markers on the surface, and then is brought inside, much like how viruses are. Or the second option is a tube shoots out, pierces the eukaryotic cell, and then seeds your cell with the bacteria's genetic coding. From here, your body does what it does and then begins building more bacterial cells and proteins that it's being told to. So the bacterial cells in the eukaryotic cell might go even further than this, infecting the nucleus with necromorphic DNA. And considering also, just so you know, the DNA of the viral bacteria is said to be almost human, and it could be building these compatible instructions to create new structures on the body. And there is one final hypothesis on this bacteria that I believe is a possibility. I think it's liberated human cells. I don't find it strange that these genes appear to be somewhat human and they are able to infect humans so effectively. I believe at the same point in time, a human was essentially broken down with the cells remaining as a single cell and surviving, sort of like a cancer, as opposed to a multicellular organism which would expire over time. And really, to see evidence of this, you don't have to look any further than the corruption. So the marker is able to break down the eukaryotic structuring almost regressively